So we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for coming and joining us today. We really appreciate it. We welcome you back to moving towards having in-person parent impact meetings. So yay. For those of you who aren't here with us, we as always open up our doors and ask you to please feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You all have an agenda. It looks fairly large, but in reality it should be a fairly quick meeting. I'm going to go ahead and I want to start off with discussing the upcoming surveys that were sent out to parents. These surveys are what we use for our school improvement programs. These are typically assigned to us by the state to then push out to parents. We will also be giving them to third and up for students. These surveys are then when we're able to collect the data on how the students feel the school is performing, how the parents feel the school is performing, for school safety, for school culture, school climate. So again, when you get these, we do appreciate you if you please fill them out and you submit them. Again, this is not the direct survey that we send out as a school. This is the state asking us for input. So this is one of those situations where we would say, make sure that when you're filling this out, that you remember these results are not coming directly to us as part of one of our surveys. Again, we have the open door policies. We always invite you to come and talk to us if you have any questions or concerns, so please, anytime.
Okay. As mentioned at the last Parent Impact meeting, we are going to start having a Parent PD series. So we will be offering once a month a mini session, probably about 30 minutes is all it will take. On Zoom, we will offer an elementary Parent PD, middle school, and high school. Dates and topics will be sent in the Pirate Post. Elementary, we have our first session tomorrow, which is about iReady, and a little bit for parents on how you can use the parent resources on iReady to help your children. So these will be monthly topics. Zoom links will be sent out in the Pirate Post. So just look for your specific grade level. We did decide to do them on separate days so that if you have students that are in multiple grade levels that you can attend, these are just what interests you or what you feel like you need more information on. So it'll be a little bit of us talking and a little bit of us answering questions that parents have in these sessions.
All right, good morning. So I am going to go over the December upcoming events. I'm not going to read every bullet point to you because it's a calendar. You don't need me to read all the days, but the big takeaway for December and for really the rest of November, there is something happening nearly every day of every week. November and December are busy times because we don't have a lot of school in those months. We have vacations and holidays and things like that. But we do have a lot to get done with regard to diagnostic testing, kind of taking a pulse in terms of where our kids are, what they've learned. So kids are doing an iReady diagnostic during the month of December. That's really important that they are, trying their best on that diagnostic. It helps us to find out what we need to do for the rest of the year to make sure that we finish strong. So if kids are not performing their best on that diagnostic, then we almost have to dial back our instruction because we're thinking they've got gaps that they don't have. So if they're not trying their best, we can't push them, as far as we would normally be able to push them. So the middle school diagnostics are already set for the 1st and the 8th. Those are advisory days. Kids will take diagnostics in their advisory classrooms. Semester exams for middle and high school students are the week of the 14th through the 17th. Those are half days. So kids will come at their regular time. They will leave at 11 o'clock. They take 2 exams per day that they are here. So those are kind of the big secondary updates in terms of academics. Now, there's assemblies, there's winter wishes, there's, the Spirit Week for all grade levels where the kids are dressing up in themed dress and we're having a good time on our way out for winter break. If kids are absent at all during these, few weeks, it's sad for them because they're missing a lot of fun stuff. So we just want to really encourage everybody to have their kids come to school in December and the rest of November. iReady testing I already kind of touched on. That was going to be my next bullet point. Those iReady tests in elementary are staggered throughout the grade levels. So you'll be looking for information from your classroom teacher with regard to when your specific student and grade level tests are ready, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then we already talked about semester exams being a half day, good night's sleep, eating breakfast before they come to school. For those semester exams, there is a nutrition break in between, so kids get to pause, go outside, eat a snack, and then come back in and do well on their second exam.
Sorry. Attendance. So one of the things that we always want to talk about, especially as we're coming back into person, is what the expectations are with attendance. These rules that schools have versus the rules and expectations that the state have don't always align completely. So we like to be as transparent as possible when it comes to attendance. Now the state says that students have to be present for at least 10% of the school year. This comes out to be roughly about 8 to 10 days max that a student is permitted to miss total. Please understand that when you give us a doctor's note or you give us an excuse, we could mark in our system that a student is excused. That's for our record keeping. However, the state counts all days that a student is not in their seat as a missed day and as an absence. So just because you're giving us the doctor's note or you're prearranging an absence, please remember that this does not mean that the student is excused from this 10% window that the state sets by us. We are still a public school. We still have to abide by state and local guidelines. And this is one of those guidelines that the state takes very, very seriously. We get audited as a school regularly for this. This is how funding works for all public schools based on seat time for students. So the state is not in the habit of giving away free money. And so they will definitely be monitoring our records. So again, we just like to be as transparent as possible with families, because I know, especially getting close to the holidays, families like to try to set up for vacations. But please remember, just because it's set up as a prearranged absence does not mean that it will actually be an excused absence per state per this 10% guideline. Again, if you have questions about it or you have something coming up, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to further explain it. You could also reach out to our Sloan Info email account as well if you have additional questions, and we're happy to answer all of them. But attendance is very important. We saw this, I think, exemplified during COVID, to how much of an improvement students do when they're here, when they're in person, when they're present, getting their education. And a day here and a day there may not seem like much, but so much is covered in a single day that then they have to play catch up. So again, continuing to move forward, try to set up vacations according to the school calendar as much as possible, just to try to prevent and avoid those issues. Yes?
Can I ask?
Of course you can.
Kind of two questions. So obviously the 10% is, it's not a large number, especially if it's a COVID case.
Correct.
Like my daughter had strep and then my son had COVID, so she was actually out for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
She's all caught up and we've talked. Like, is there anything that I need to do because obviously she's
Correct.
over the 8-day max.
No, but see, that's where the communicating with us and giving us the letters
Right.
in, and us being able to label things excused, that lets us know as a parent, okay, you're not, or as a school, that you're not just keeping your kids home because you want to. You've provided documentation. We know that the child was sick. We do not want to penalize children for being sick, right? But that's why schools will oftentimes say, we need medical documentation. We need something from the doctor to show that the child was in care. The child was asked not to return for these 3 days. This way then we can keep track of that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
My second question is there a way for your automated telephone system to say that your kid has been reported absent to match, like, for example, I picked up my daughter yesterday, she wasn't feeling well, checked her out, but yet I still get a phone call and an email saying,
So the
your
reason-
daughter's been reported absent.
So the reason for that is attendance is actually taken twice a day. In every class is taken in secondary, but in elementary especially, and across the board, attendance is kind of monitored at least twice a day. Morning session and afternoon session. And for a student to be considered present, they have to be in school for a certain amount of that time. So Infinite Campus, it's a machine. So it sees that a student was taken out early, it sees that that student is not in the school at that PM session,
Mm-hmm.
It automatically calls.
So
I'm
it's
sure
two
that,
completely different sessions.
correct, and
Perfect.
I'm sure there's a way to fix that, but I'm not a programmer, and I know Infinite Campus has not given us the ability to do that,
Gotcha.
so. But it's definitely a good recommendation.
Yeah, so for secondary, I think, even if they were only marked absent, say, in first period, but then they attended all the other classes, it's still, you still get to call, say, if they're
Yes.
absent.
Right.
Because in every
It
class is a
doesn't say
micro.
Absent in
attendance.
first period.
So when you
Correct.
look at your Infinite Campus account, you'll notice, if you look at your kids' absences, each period
It'll say
counts
absent
as
or present.
one absence.
Right.
So in theory, if you're gone on an advisory day, for example, that's 8 absences.
9 actually.
9 if you count the advisory period,
Right.
correct, yeah.
But it's really
So-
only one day.
Correct, it's one day.
Correct.
So I did notice this year, when I look at absences in the attendance, like tab on my end, they do, kind of like group them together in terms of days. In years past, it was a period count.
Yeah.
So we've made progress there.
So like, for instance,
We've
yeah, so
discussed
for
it as
instance,
days
like,
now.
if it's a mistake,
Uh-huh.
then, you know, you have to go in the Infinite Campus and see which period they were marked absent,
Mhm.
or.
If you just email the registrar and let her know
They'll figure it
they've been
out.
marked absent in error, she can look that up very
So
easily.
you don't need me to like research exactly
No.
which
No.
teacher and.
No, if you just say, hey, this was an error,
Right.
the registrar will call the teacher, say, hey, was such and such in the class that day? Yes, they were marked down, they came in 5 minutes late, and I
Because I know
actually
last
marked them
year
as
they-
absent.
I would question that because, I was then told by registrar to reach out to my teacher.
Exactly, right.
So,
That's-
I would just recommend if you're going to do that, I would look in Infinite Campus, I would email the teacher as well as
That's what I did.
registrar at the same time, just to save time on registrar's time, because you have one student, she has 2,000.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Over communication is always good.
Yeah.
You could throw your, the admin over those grade levels on there, throw the kitchen sink at it, but it's always better to over.
Okay, so I'll just continue doing it right after.
yeah, I mean,
Teacher
I would
and-
just, it's easier on you and on the administration. Sorry.
No,
That's okay.
hey, bring it up,
Yeah.
this is why we're here, this is the beauty of being in person, it's a lot easier. I don't have to keep opening up a little text window.
Oh,
I think attendance is really important too, as Ms. Marino said, with the iReady testing, the makeup days for students, if they miss on one of those test days, is very limited. And it is oftentimes, if it's in elementary, it's often, they're then pulled out of class time to do the makeup exams. Middle school,
They would be pulled out.
they would be pulled out as well. So that's why the attendance, especially on those testing days, is also so important.
And things that, and again, I want to throw this out there for families to think ahead of, for SBAC coming up. That's a very fixed window that we are able to assign these tests, and when those tests are given, it's not as easy as just pulling somebody out and letting them finish it. There's a lot of testing security that's involved in this, and it's very, very involved. It's gonna usually require pulling a teacher to sit with a student for makeups. So once we set out the calendar, and I know parents would always love to have the calendar for SBAC right now, but we have to wait until the state releases the windows to us, and then we could sit down as a team and assign the days for the school. But once that happens, we ask that students please be here for SBAC, make sure you try not to miss any of those days, because it's very difficult to make those up.
April or May?
It's usually towards the
End
end.
of April.
Yes, the end of April, sometimes at the beginning of May. We usually try to do them right after spring break or right around thereof, but again, we have to wait until they release the window, and then we have to be able to sit as a team and as a system to assign. So we'll put those out the second we have those dates etched out. We will send them out for families to plan.
And while we're talking about attendance and sickness and things, can I just, quickly clarify, if there is a case of COVID, it's listed in the fire post, if that case was in your child's classroom, you will be personally notified?
There are 2 notices that go out. There's one that's like there's been a case, and then there's the other that is your child is identified as a close contact. So if your child was identified as a close contact of that individual with COVID, you would be getting a separate notice.
Okay, so if my kid comes home and says, so-and-so was out sick and they have COVID in my class, but I'm like, well, I didn't hear about that, that means that was just a rumor.
So, well, yeah, they've also changed the guidelines as well, just in terms of what is considered a close contact. So the close contact it's like more limited number now than it used to be.
It's not just in the classroom.
It used to be, if it was anyone in the class, you were a close contact, and you got the letter. That's not true anymore.
Now it's within certain
Yeah.
feet for a certain extent, a certain amount of
Got
time.
it, okay.
So,
Without a mask.
Without a mask.
But we're gonna be notified.
yes.
Yes.
If they were exposed.
Yeah, and then each of those cases is reported to the health district as well, and then the health district gives feedback.
Yeah, cause then when your kid like has a little cold, it's like you're wondering, okay, now I gotta keep them home from school, cause they have a cold.
Sure.
But, or should I send them and,
You know, when in doubt, err on the side of caution, give us the notification, like I said, anytime you're able to provide the record that their student was in medical, that, or saw a doctor, then we're able to upload that into the system too. But again, we just like to be as transparent as possible, because
Right.
days accumulate really fast, and they accumulate throughout the course of the year.
Right.
And people don't always realize that, and all of a sudden they're wondering why their kid is considered chronically absent in, January because they've missed 10 days. And it's like, well, because your student's been chronically absent. We understand it, you've given us the notes, we might be excusing it when you look at your Infinite Campus, it says excused, but what the state records and what we record are slightly different.
Our health office does a great job keeping up to date with the regulations, so, and it changes, so, I know, for example, we had a situation where we did have to send some students home, but then the regulations changed, and they're up to date on everything. So as soon as something happens, they're very proactive, so.
All right, so.
We ask that as we finish out the year and we enter the second semester, that parents continue partnering with us in upholding dress code and behavior expectations. Especially as the weather gets colder, we start to notice the jackets, the tights, those kinds of things. Refer back to that parent-student handbook that's posted on our website. And then just in terms of behavior, sometimes towards the end of the semester, kids sense a change in routine and in all grade levels, and so we do see those increased incidents of behavior. So if anything that you're made aware of, if you communicate with us, you communicate with your student as well, the behavior expectations while they're at school, we greatly appreciate that. And yes?
So, in regards to behavior, what's the policy with phones? Like, I think it's good communication-wise, parents to be able to communicate with the kids when they need to or have free time, but I communicate with Ms. Lear, I think that's the dean.
Ms. Lark.
Ms. Lark.
Ms. Lark, okay. So, when some of her classes, some of my daughter's classes, they have free time, like she's like, okay, I'm done with construction, you can use your phone. And okay, that's fine. But my daughter's come home and told me so many explicit things that are being watched and reviewed, not by teachers, but by students who have free access to phones. And I know it's not through the school, so you can't put a, filter
Right.
for sure, but like, what are the parameters, or what is the teacher expectation? I know the teacher wouldn't just allow it, but
So they should not have their phones out in the classroom at all.
it's a
So
daily thing.
if you would do me a favor and just send me an email with like the classes that's occurring in, I would appreciate it.
I don't think it's my kids, that's how, like, a lot of parents have said the same thing. And it's, like, I have more than one kid here, and so it's like, oh, like,
So we
not
would,
to be too explicit, but I literally, in the first month, and I can talk with Dean about this, I had to talk to my daughter about tonight, oral sex, like, it's listed.
Oh my goodness,
And
yeah.
this is in the classroom, and so it's really,
so I would say to all parents that are listening, if you hear of this, please feel free to reach out to us to let us know. They should not be using their phones in class.
So the rule is they can have their phone, and if the teacher says, bring out your phone to use as a calculator or to use for a specific class assignment, the only time they should have the phone out.
So if their teacher explicitly states, then yes, they can take it out. However, I want to clarify that their teacher, there's really no reason for them to take their phone out. They should all have access to a Chromebook now.
Right.
So it's been communicated to staff on multiple occasions that the kids should not be using their phone.
I know
In the first month or so of school, because not every kid did have a device, the teachers were allowing some students to use their phone.
like, I followed up with her yesterday, because I know it's coming from you.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, is that, hey, I check, like, every other week, like, is it still going on? It's like, yeah, I see stuff every day, and they kids are, and it's like,
Okay.
I don't know.
So that's
Yeah.
an expectation their phones out in class at all.
I know sometimes when mine have had it out, it's to take notes, like take a picture of the notes on the board because they can't write fast enough. And so they've taken like pictures to, you know,
So
be
some
able
students
to,
have,
you know.
like, there are some students with accommodations, like that say, take a picture of the board, so you have the notes. That being said, if your student does not have an accommodation, if they're taking a picture, they should be doing it with their device. Each of their devices should be able to take a picture.
To take the computer up and take a pic, really? That seems very.
They can usually do it right from their
Yeah.
desk, yeah. It's pretty easy, we used to do it at St. Rose all the time, it's super quick. And they actually get like a bigger, usually can get a bigger picture.
Here's a challenge, kids, you know, children grew up with a lot of this technology. They, you know, and this is not, they are sneaky. They know things that I wish I knew. Because sometimes, you know, and they know how to have multiple tabs open, they know how to quickly switch between things, they know how to use their phone and, you know, do a quick swap out to something else. There are apps now that that look like a calculator, but when you click on it, you put in certain numbers with the calculator, it opens up like a secret file for them to store things in. You know, kids are crafty. So, you know, this is one of the reasons that we ask them not to have it. Taking pictures in class, we understand that, but again, then we have to get into where does FERPA start and end. If they're taking pictures of their friends, it's technically a violation. So there, you know, it becomes this very difficult balance. When we were short on computers, the rules changed because we had to be able to accommodate the way the system was supposed to work and the way it's meant to work. However, now that we're back to that one-to-one, across the board, that shouldn't be happening. Elementary, they should not have their phones out at all. Students with smartwatches are even encouraged to either not have them or have parents set the parental control so that it's not really, you know, they can't really do anything else on it. Because trust me, it's funny when you see a kid sitting there doing a math test and they're trying to twiddle their thumbs and think. 19. You know, so just again, as a parent, if you have those access, we encourage that, especially when you know big tests are coming up. Don't even send them with their smartwatches.
And then just like she said, communicate when you find things out, or, you know, we both have children who come to school here as well, so the same thing, have them communicate, and then just reach out to us if you are aware of anything, and that's that partnership and that kind of communication that we're talking about.
It just also helps with accountability, because like when I give a blanket statement, hey, I'm hearing that there's phones out in classrooms, reminder, we shouldn't have phones out in classrooms, like, human nature, right, is to say, well, not in my classroom, like, the kids are fine in my classroom, but when there's a specific incident that I can, you know, report to a teacher and say, hey, you know, I just wanted to make you aware, I know that usually kids are on task in your room, but it was brought up that this was being shown after class, like, you know, so it just kind of gives everybody a heightened sense of awareness, I think, you know, as opposed to just the blanket statement.
And it's not that we'll say your child's name told
Right.
us,
Yeah.
you know, it's those anonymous kind of, or, you know, just those communication where we won't say.
Well, I will just put this suggestion out there, then I would check with all of your teachers who do, the study hall, what's that called?
Study skills.
Study skills, because it's not a quiet study hall. They are all on their phones, on their computers, and they do not have the ability to, study in a quiet environment in that classroom.
Perfect, thank
So,
you. Thank you.
that's an easy
Yeah,
one
that
for
is
you
an
guys
easy
to
one.
just
Yes.
tackle
Yeah.
right away.
100%.
And that's why we appreciate parents coming and telling us these things, because again, you know, we could walk in and all of a sudden things are quiet.
Oh.
We kind of have to depend on the families and parents and students to share the information. Yes?
Yes, so I have for Brady, same question goes for sibling care. My son, kind of say some things about other kids with the same issue with the phones that are coming from him. So I understand sibling care is, free care, so I don't know what the policies for those sort of.
Sibling care, the kids do usually have their phones out because one, it's after school, but two, it actually helps us in Carloop if the kids have their phones, because if for whatever reason they don't hear, you know, they don't see their name on the screen or there's some sort of a delay, if parents have already been texting their kids, I'm in Carloop, like the kid knows, oh, I'm looking for my name, oh, I'm going out to, like, so it's helpful for us for them to have their phones out. there's also a lot of kids in there. So we do have, staff monitoring and roaming. They go up and down, the rows, they're checking. Obviously, they will not be able to catch every instance of something inappropriate on every phone. Mostly because if a kid is paying even a little bit of attention and they have something inappropriate on their phone, they will just turn it off when the adult walks by. So that's where, again, reporting the individual instances so that I can go to that child and make that child accountable for what's on their phone is important. I think that's kind of something that we also, didn't really address in our, in the last few minutes we've been talking about this, is like that personal accountability as well. Holding kids accountable for the choices they're making with their devices is very important. It's not just all on the teacher, right? The kids know what the rules are and what should be on their phone and what should not. So holding the kids personally accountable for the choices they're making on the phone is a big deal too.
Well, I also think it comes back to us as parents. We also have a responsibility to communicate to our children what is and isn't responsible to be doing wherever. We can't put all this on the admin. If those kids are watching inappropriate things, chances are their parent is probably not that involved and not sitting here in this meeting today, so we also have to educate our children that if somebody is doing something that they don't feel is appropriate, then don't look, move to another area, step away, and report it to your parent, that's fine, but don't continue to engage in whatever it is that is upsetting to them.
Go to the other side of the room.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Remove yourself from the situation.
Sitting care happens where?
Any other?
Secondary and secondary.
So, are the kids allowed to be outside in the room when they're sitting there?
Only when their number has been called or put in, and it's showing up. It's just like in the classrooms for elementary where it shows, little Johnny go to this zone 3. They're supposed to leave there and immediately go. But kids being kids aren't always looking at that, or they're not always hearing the person on the microphone, and which is why it's always handy for the sibling care because of the sheer number. Like in classroom, we've got 25 kids, 30 kids. In sibling care, significantly more. It's good for them to have the phone for their parent to be like, hey, I'm at zone 0, you haven't come out yet, where are you? And the student could be like, oh, whoops, I wasn't paying attention, let me go.
What happens in sibling care? It's over in the secondary building, you said?
Mhm.
For everyone?
For the older students, because the elementary students are still dismissing, and the secondary students are in that building for sibling care.
Like for elementary in the morning, what do the kids do in sibling care?
They're
So
in here
they're
in the morning.
They're in the morning.
They're talking, some of them are working on homework they didn't do the night before, some of them are playing,
Reading a book.
they're reading.
They sit at the tables that are up in the back by grade level.
Can they play outside?
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm really going with that.
Not until we have the staff that's on duty to be able to go out there and watch them.
I'm kind of confused why that is. It seems like such a no-brainer to have the kids out there burn out that energy.
Well, because at the same time.
We don't have
middle school and
anybody
high
to
school-
monitor them, they're all working car loop.
Yeah, people are working car loop, and then you have secondary students wandering around and walking through, so it's that attempt to kind of keep elementary separate from secondary at the same
But
time.
aren't there kids out there in the morning? I think
Not at that time.
Not elementary students, there are
Yes.
secondary students out walking to class.
I guess what I'm suggesting is maybe to figure out something in some way to allow the kids to play basketball, foursquare, whether it's in here or wherever you do it, or out there. So there's probably has to be a proctor or teacher in here, right? They could be out there on nice days.
They're
obviously.
checking in, so the way that it was set up was kind of more of that study hall type,
Schedule.
it's scheduled, because it is such a short period of time that it's a study hall, and it's a way, and truly it was a way just to help parents out with
Hey,
those
we love it.
two transitions. So giving them that extra time to get on and read a book, or if they have their Chromebook to, work on their blended learning. But that's exactly right, the staffing, and here, the check-in process, the number of kids that are coming in requires, we have to account for everybody as well. They sit at grade level tables for contact tracing as well. So we're trying to keep all of our grade level groups together. On Mondays and Fridays, when we have morning ceremonies, right at 8 o'clock, then they go outside to play on the playground. So it's really the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
So on
And
Tuesday,
then
Wednesday, Thursday, at 8 o'clock, they're supposed to go straight to their
The class,
classroom.
correct.
the other days, they go straight to their
At 8
classroom.
o'clock.
So it's really just that
small window.
small window of time in between.
And remember, again, the other factor is, in addition to the organization, supervision, contact tracing, we've got to keep these kids safe. Having 150 or 200 elementary kids outside on the playground while we have 900 secondary students being dropped off and walking through, we want to be able to make sure that the little ones aren't getting mixed in with the older ones and wandering off. Because I'm telling you, some of these fifth graders could pass as being secondary students. And some secondary students could pass as being elementary. It's a weird dynamic. But you know, we gotta remember, we're a mixed school for grades. We want our older students to have that sense that when they're coming to school and they're walking through, that they're getting to be the big dogs on campus, that they're getting to be the secondary and high school students. It's a little disheartening for some of these students, and this is direct feedback that we've gotten from students, to walk in and then, you know, always see the elementary kids there, which is why we purposely try to limit how much interaction there is between
I don't have a
them.
solution, but maybe something fun inside, whatever it might be. Anything, just more.
But again,
like-
you know, the sheer number, and then again, for contact tracing and keeping it, you know, it's like a full lunchroom in here. So trying to,
It's full, it's pretty full
It's
in
full.
here.
Can
all
I-
these seats
Also-
are taken.
I know you're really pushing for the fun, and I get that, but, Wallen Elementary, did a study, and then they implemented this, where before school, when the kids had the ability to go outside and play, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this.
My kids went there.
They changed that time period to going into the classroom and doing their 15, 20 minutes of reading a night, and their test scores accelerated through the roof. So I think, you know, granted, I think activity is super important for kids, but I also think that everybody pushes that 15 minutes of required reading. We'll catch up over on the weekend, or we'll do a half an hour tomorrow. That if parents switch their mindset and utilize that time for that 15 minutes of reading,
I think that you mentioned earlier, it's
you know-
not an environment where it's quiet to do that. It's like that study skills thing. They can't read that, during that
Well-
short period of time, 15 or 20 minutes, it's an environment, you're not gonna get any work done. It's too,
Ours
from what
too-
I'm getting from my kids, it's too chaotic.
But it's also variation from kid to kid. We do have a lot of students that do. And we
They
see
can
it.
sit in a big room with
Yeah.
all those kids and actually get
They're
something.
not
done.
running, they're not running around and jumping around. They, you know, it varies from student to student, just like it does adult to adult. Some are better at being able to tune things out and do
Go
some
to
of
the
it.
classroom, and then that's supposed to be a quiet, the 8 to 8:30 is supposed to be a
It's a
quiet.
half hour right there.
In the classroom, right?
But it's also classroom specific
I mean,
work. They're getting caught up on
here's the
classroom
other
work.
option, and I had to do this for the first 2 years of school when sibling care wasn't offered. You know what? I drove through the loop, I parked in the lot, my daughter and I got out, we did laps, and then it was time for her to go to school. She either walked in the playground or we got back in car loop and we drove around. So, I mean, sibling care is a benefit, an amazing benefit that I wish you guys had before. But, I mean, you don't have to utilize it if you don't like how it's being implemented. You as a parent can, you know, go wherever and burn off that energy for your kid.
I'm
So-
just basically suggestion, I agree with everything you said. I'm encouraging them to think outside of the box. And even if it's like she said, cornhole or something simple to make it more fun and interactive, I think it's another great opportunity for kids to develop their social skills and these type of things. I don't think it's the environment where are gonna learn anything. Once they go to the classroom at 8, then they have a half hour to read or do their homework or whatever. So I would encourage you guys to maybe try to think outside the box and make it more, you know.
Thank you. And so
Maybe
for Carly,
tic-tac-toe, they could do that sitting down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stick where you make squares, like, you know, you're sitting at a table across from each other.
Oh, I just never, it doesn't matter to me. Speaking of arrival and dismissal. The last
Segue.
bullet point, is car loop arrival and dismissal procedures. One thing that we just wanted to kind of reiterate to everybody is that when people fill out a walker form, the walker form states that you live within safe walking distance of school, which means that your child is walking from your house to the school, and they're walking from the school to your house. So, we're just suggesting that if you bring your student to school via vehicle, that they are dropped off in the actual car loop. They should not be dropped off down the street at the gas station. They shouldn't be dropped off, while you're waiting in line for car loop on the side street, and then that way you don't have to enter car loop. Everybody that's being dropped off by a vehicle needs to be dropped off in car loop. They need to be getting out of their vehicle in the car loop and getting into their vehicle in the car loop. That's very important. It makes everything run actually more smoothly. So that's all that we're trying to suggest and reinforce.
I think, are you guys, I know initially, especially you were out there live, like, other people were on the corners, like, 2 weeks ago. It could have been an accident, like a parent in the car, instead of like, you turn into the school, but to the elementary parking lot right there, pulled right up at the thing, and so cars that are trying to go that way or turn in, and cars that are trying to get out, this car is obstructing the view to let kids out, and it's like.
Which is why we try to encourage the parents, again, don't drop off in the front, parking lot, go through the car loop. I've gone through it multiple times, clocking it, Mr. Torrey's gone through it, a lot of our staff has gone through it. If you show up to it when the car loop is actively running, it usually takes about 15 minutes to go through from beginning to end in the afternoon, and even faster in the morning, because we're not waiting for students to come out. It's a fast process. Sometimes when we have parents that are showing up way too early, they're lining up along the street, they're trying to be the first ones in, that actually delays a lot of issues, because it causes a lot of those blind spots, a lot of these dead zones, a lot of these areas where people just can't see, and it creates this unsafe environment for the kiddos. Again, we can't control traffic that's outside of our school property.
Well, this one was right at the end.
Correct. So we can definitely have somebody out there trying to help and limit cars coming in. But it's the same thing where, when we ask parents not to do that, we put somebody out there, we tend to still get the same parents trying to come in to park there.
And they're not nice to the staff.
Which is gonna bring me to my next talking point for car loop. Remember how, please keep in mind, whether it's car loop, whether you're having a bad day, we understand that all happens. But when you're coming through car loop in the morning or the afternoon, you're dealing with staff members, remember, this is a school. We have kids everywhere, they hear everything. Parents hear everything. We all have those bad days, but there's no need for profanity going through car loop. There's no need for getting angry, screaming, trying to, not follow the expectations or directions of car loop. If you have questions or concerns, there's nothing, pick up your student, go park in the front, come in, ask for any one of the administrators. We're happy to listen to you. Some things we can help out with, some things we can't. We'll always, again, be transparent with you, and we'll always say yes, why, or no, why. Some of you know this better than others. And, but we do ask that please don't use profanity, because the kids do hear it. Parents hear it. It becomes a talk on Facebook. It becomes a talk everywhere else. There's no need for it. But please be aware that if you are using profanity, or if you are not, or you are refusing to follow directions that the school sets forth, we will trespass. Because again, we're looking at what the safety for the students, the safety for our parents that are following the rules and following the directions.
Is it possible to have any safety officers? Because I'm saying I was the one who couldn't see, and I felt like I had more concern about someone else's kids, so I'm the one who was waiting concerned, so I stopped everything.
We're continuously trying to hire for staff, so if we know anybody that's interested in coming on and being either full-time or part-time security staff for us that could help out with that, please give them our emails. I'm happy to interview. I'm happy to hire people right off the bat for that, to say, hey, this is how we do it. Outsourcing, always sounds great, but you gotta remember, we're a public school. And I looked into trying to get flaggers and traffic control through. It's $5,000 a week for people to go out there and direct traffic.
Are there any teachers? It just seems like such a big potential legal liability. I think about that secondary,
Sure.
but of course, kids' safety, but as an attorney, when I come to this is just something I hold back to be waiting to happen, and it's horrible.
We're actually not allowed to put teachers out in the, like, the
The
street
roadways.
itself.
Are you allowed to have any parent volunteers?
We're not allowed to put anyone that is not like an official, like, crossing guard, like that we have hired, out in the street.
As opposed
But the
to
crossing
looking at
guards, those are like parents.
So
Yeah.
there's a few different, and I only know this because of St. Rose, being on campus,
Yep.
we had a huge, issue trying to get crossing guards. The crossing guards that are employed by CCSD, for whatever reason, are not accessible to us. We're not able to, even though we are a public school, the state funds the crossing guards for CCSD. They do not fund our crossing guards. So I think that's what Ed is referencing.
Correct.
In terms of the cost to have the crossing guards come out there.
Same reason the state will not fund busing for us, and the same reason the state will not fund various other programs such as safety. You know, it's the same exact reason. You know, we do a lot with a lot less money that gets to us. That's why when you look at the money spent per student in the state average, that is not the actual money spent per student, that's funding all these other programs. So again, you know, we can't, because the second we try to put a teacher or employee or ask a parent to go out there and do anything, we're now liable. If something happens to that student or that parent or anybody, we created that situation. So we only have control from our property, and that pseudo extends to our sidewalks. Outside of that, we can't control, we can't direct the traffic.
That's why we're always just asking parents to please
Right.
follow the laws of
Yeah,
the
that's
road.
why these programs only work when parents are supportive of it and they follow it.
Hopefully that was a situation where it was like a relative or a friend, oh, can you help me out today, and they don't know the rules. Give them a benefit of the doubt.
But you always hope that that never happens again, right? Because, you know, everybody has that parent that does
They're
it.
like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do this, I was just helping out,
Correct.
so you always gotta.
The last thing I want to throw out there for Carla, because I know a lot of parents, I'll be happy to just give me 1 second, I'll come right back to you. One thing that we're noticing that was just brought to my attention this morning is they've now gated off the roadway over on, extending down the rest of Volunteer. Parents used to like to come and try to stage there, and they would legally do it because they were staying off the roadway. However, now the gates make that impossible. So when you're showing up and you're trying to stage out on Volunteer, you're blocking the roadway, you're actively blocking the roadway. That is illegal. Police have already reached out to me saying what's going on with this, and same thing I'm telling you. We've asked parents not to.
We're not
You do what you need to do.
volunteers.
Not Volunteer, I'm sorry, not Volunteer,
Dale.
Dale.
Okay, I'm like.
Nope, Dale, sorry.
Yeah,
So
'cause
on
they
Dale,
fenced
they just
that
put
all
up the
off
fencing
now.
and kind of blocked that
Yeah,
off.
so all around that area, there's new more.
Correct, so
signs,
again,
more.
please, you know, showing up an hour early or a half hour early trying to get in the car loop doesn't actually expedite anything. You know, because you're showing up a half hour earlier, but if you waited that half hour and showed up, you're gonna wait 15 minutes to go through car loop. But you're spending the half hour waiting for car loop, plus the 15 minutes for your kids to come out, you're actually waiting more by not showing up early. So, you know.
Well, I mean, it's a lot, and no offense,
Yeah.
elementary parents, but I mean, I come at 2:30 to pick up my secondary students, and Dale is backed
Backed up.
all the way up, almost to Bermuda.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your kids don't even get out for an hour, like.
Yeah. It's not expediting it. It's not helping. It's hurting it. It's making it an unsafe environment. Please don't show up earlier expecting it to run smooth. We open up the gates for secondary for dismissal at 20. At that point, then the parents can start showing up and staging and moving around. But again, getting here at 2 o'clock isn't helping anything, because you're gonna wait the 20 minutes and you're still gonna wait another 20 minutes before you're able to even get your kiddos.
And I know, in defense of some of the people, like, I know I have a standing meeting every Thursday at 1:30,
Mhm.
and I have to be active, and it's an hour meeting. So I come and I get here early and I sit and I take my meeting in the car, because otherwise I'm late for picking up, you know.
Right.
So, you know, there are
Extenuating
reasons
circumstances.
behind why some of these, but every day I'm like, oh my God.
But imagine
I'm like, I have so
how
much
much
more I
less
could do than
traffic
sit in
there
my
would be
car.
if people only do it on those extenuating circumstances. Then it's only
Right, you
20,
have to
30
be the
people a
first
day
person
instead of
out
150.
the loop to get the visa.
Yeah, instead of 150, then it's only the 20 or 30 a day, and it's not the same people every
Yeah.
day. So just please keep that in mind when you're planning. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off before,
I
so.
got patience, I gave it. People work today. So I'm not exaggerating, it's not my imagination, you guys did pull the gate out more, so people cannot park there. correct?
Yeah, that was the.
Which-
Because I know the gate was there, right?
chain link
But
fence.
today, when I drove by, I felt like it's pulled out of nowhere, people cannot park there to wait for their children.
We don't touch the gate the gating that's down there?
Yes.
That's has nothing to do with us.
Oh, okay.
That's not our
So you know
construction.
they moved it so people can no longer park.
That's whatever it's that construction company for whatever project that they're building in there, it's separate from us.
That's a good thing, 'cause it
Yeah.
helps your
Yeah.
rules be
Yeah.
followed, but I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, today people may have a little bit.
But the
Yeah.
trucks parked there too, so I don't know where they're gonna go.
Well, and they're not supposed to, and officers have come and asked them not to move to. You know, Amazon has worked with us heads and tails. I have to seriously say I'm very proud of them. They've worked with us. They've come and met with us to try to change their delivery times, to try to reduce, and I think they've drastically reduced
Yeah.
the number of trucks that are coming through during our busiest times in the mornings and afternoons.
Yeah,
We still get
Amazon,
them.
I was really impressed with them. I mean, they just asked us, what time do you open up the gate? What time do you finish? Okay, nothing comes in and out during that window.
They
That's
installed,
been fantastic.
they installed cameras so that they can see if trucks are backing up now, so they installed exterior cameras to be able to watch. Amazon honestly went above and beyond what I would have expected them to do.
So what
Yeah.
time is secondary car move over? Because I come at 2:55, I come at 3 o'clock, and sometimes you guys have already let the other people come in for elementary. What time is the correct answer that car move will be over?
3 o'clock
Okay,
is
perfect,
the correct answer.
perfect.
So you start loading them, the cars start coming in at 3 o'clock, come around and then,
They should, yes, 3
and then
o'clock
they
is what
wait
time
in the
it's supposed to
secondary,
be.
they don't come through yet
Correct.
until 3:25.
The challenge that we sometimes have, and this goes to parents showing up way too early, is when it's becoming a hazard and it's getting closer to 3 o'clock and most students have been picked up and we're only getting that once in a blue moon parent that's showing up. We kind of also have to make that snap judgment of, okay, we've had this clear and present danger on the roadway. Do we move these parents in to try to get them off of that roadway? We know that there's probably going to be another secondary parent coming through, but we have to weigh those two choices.
That makes sense, that's fair.
So.
So at that point, are you to just get into car move, or is it okay to come to the front and get that way?
If it's at that point, if you're coming to pick up, I mean, you're the
Either
secondary,
way is
so
fine.
whatever you're comfortable with, but I would say, yeah, it's,
Whatever you prefer at that point.
yeah. Because at that point, you're trying to follow the rules, you're doing everything you can. If we move people in and we block them, that's not your fault, that's on us because we were trying to create a safer environment.
So secondary car loop ends officially at 3,
Yes, it should be
and
2:30.
elementary starts at 3.
No, so elementary,
Well, stage
3:20
25.
is staging. And we dismiss at 3:25 starts. So from that 3 to 3:20, we shouldn't have parents showing up for elementary.
Fully loaded.
But they shouldn't be, that's the whole point, and they should not be there. Those are the parents that are showing up way too early that we're talking about that causes the concerns that we have. You know, those parents that wanna be there to try to stage, we encourage them to show up at 3:20.
Is there anything else, in the pipeline that has been, thought about to make it better?
I know you and I have spoken quite a bit about that. We put in to have another traffic study done to try to see what the state will be willing to adjust or do for us, or adjust traffic-wise, crossing street-wise, because again, they won't give us crosswalks because there's no residential
Now,
across from
the
us.
hope is that when the apartments across Volunteer finish, there will be a crosswalk there. So that should actually help as well.
But, you know, as far as anything else, we need the traffic study done first, which we've already put in for, to then find out what will they potentially allow us to do on either trying to expand the entrance or exit and anything like that. But we can't take more property when we don't have more property.
And there should be some sort of an exception to that rule that you're not in residential zone. Well, you know, we're a school and, you know, whatever. You know, there should be an exception to, we still need to keep our kids safe.
I invite you to reach out to our local congressmen and women and voice your concern because, again,
So essentially the idea behind that is that there is no crosswalk because most of these streets are not deemed safe to cross.
Not yet.
So,
Which is
why
this-
they won't put the crosswalk, because
Right,
they
and
know
as
that
we're-
there's so many
As
trucks.
we're building the sidewalks and things are coming along.
and why students are only supposed to be walking if they live within a safe and reasonable distance, not just every student who wants to be a walker. There's no surrounding neighborhood for them to walk into. We're saying, good luck, cross over to Amazon.
I think it comes back to the point, parents need to be responsible for themselves and they need to follow the laws and the advice and guidance of the school. And it's not the city's responsibility to put crosswalks in a non-residential area. It's the parents' responsibilities to make sure that they follow the rules provided by the state, the city, and by the school to keep their children safe as well as the children of others.
But if there were other safety issues in place, it could then help with some of the, just not, the cars, and then maybe you could get a person out there, say, hey, that's not the right rule, you gotta go this way, and, someone.
They do have the staff out there, and they're getting yelled at, spit at, and cursed at. I mean,
We had a
the
staff member
parents
who
need
had
to
his
be
foot driven
parents.
over.
And
We had a staff
sometimes they get run
We had a
over.
staff member that was spit on. We've had a staff member that had soda thrown at them. We've had a staff member get out and get people screaming in their face.
Are you guys
I-
email the parents?
Yes, I do
Yeah.
trespass. I'm very big on trespassing.
That means that you're.
You're no
not-
I
longer
do
allowed on
wanna be
school
clear
property,
though,
period.
that that's not unique to Sloan Canyon.
Correct.
Every school I have ever worked at that runs a car loop
Yep.
Yeah.
has these issues in car loop.
Yes.
I mean, every school, I think I've been at 4 schools that have run car loops. Of those 4, at 3 campuses, at least one staff member has been run over in some capacity.
So as
So
far
I
as,
mean, it's not uncommon, that's why we ask, everybody to follow the rules.
so as far as potential changes or improvements in the pipeline, is there anything that you're saying that
Sorry.
departments there may or may not be a
We
crosswalk
don't, we
or a-
can't say if there is anything in the pipeline until we find out if there can be anything in the pipeline,
But
So-
you're giving the staff, you're the traffic staff, right?
Right, yeah.
you know?
So when Christmas time comes, we're thinking of getting all the staff that wait for the car loop again. Is it proper to drop off at the front, or is it okay to get them it while we go through the car loop?
I mean,
Ooh, that's a good question.
for safety and speed purposes, probably dropping off in the front or even being able to come in and then let us know ahead of time, because then we could call all those people into one central location if you'd like to give those things to them directly.
Okay.
I see how fun it would be to drop
But
it
the
off.
car loop
in-
would be fun.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
and they do, and let me tell you, it lightens up their day. I mean, we've had parents come through with popsicles when we were cooking out there in the summer. It lightens up their day. So, I mean, I'm all for, honestly, I'm up for doing it either way, whichever way you're comfortable with. I don't think it's gonna cause
And I'm pretty
issue.
sure I'm not gonna parent
No.
that, things like,
Right.
they're out there.
And our people that run that, our IAs, these are the people that do 2 hours of car loop in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. They're in here with the kids during lunch. They're cleaning the MP room. They're helping with things around the school. I mean, they are amazing people. So anything that anybody could ever do to help them out is always very welcome. I think it just brightens up their day. But yeah. All right.
I do have one potential suggestion that I think may help, I don't know. So I find morning car loop to be the worst for drop off for secondary, because you're trying to fill the entire loop, and so it's about a 12-minute process
Mhm.
from the start, like if you're the green ticket, to get all the way to the front to
Yeah.
drop off. And part of that is the bottleneck of the traffic trying to exit
Yes.
the building. So my thought, and I have no idea if this would work, I'm throwing it out there as a suggestion, is if for secondary, because it is secondary, if you only dropped off like in front of secondary, and when that group let off, they moved to the elementary, and that is dismissed
Correct.
in a much more efficient manner, because you only have half the cars to leave.
And it's
And
definitely.
then the next group moves up to the next staging to dismiss and then comes around. So instead of trying to load the entire thing, you're only loading half while you're emptying out that staging area in front of elementary. And I don't know I know in the beginning of the school, we used just that front part. But I think, with all the construction, and now with Dale now being under and Chaparral on the other half, and all the construction up on Volunteer, it's getting more and more difficult to turn out of the building.
So I think that's something we could definitely discuss as a team and look in, because I agree with you, sometimes less is more. Because
Right.
there's less moving parts, and that's just simpler.
Mhm.
It's just like when we do dismissal. car loop only works as car loop with dismissal because we don't extend it any further, because if we extend it any further, you're waiting for your kids even longer to come out, right?
Right.
So car loop actually works fastest when it's a smaller section. We could definitely discuss that.
And
see if
then,
it's
you know,
something
I don't
wanna
know how
try,
it works
but-
for elementary dismissal, and I know secondary is bigger because it's got sibling care.
Yeah.
You know, so, like and I'm not here for secondary pickup ever, so I don't know with sibling care if it's a greater number of cars too, but like as I'm sitting there and, you know, and it's also the secondary don't wanna get let off all the way over here, cause then they gotta walk all the way back, you know, and so they're like,
Yeah.
So secondary is longer in the morning for dismissal, because they have
Right.
more kids in elementary, and longer in the afternoon because of all the sibling care.
Yeah.
So they kind of flip-flop with each other. But it's definitely something that's something we could look into and discuss. I don't know, again, if we would go in a direction, but it's definitely something we could
yeah,
discuss.
and like I said, I don't know if it would make it any faster, it just seems like,
What actually I think makes it the most efficient is when we use, you know, the whole area, but when we actually move cars forward, when we're patient about really filling up that whole area. Because what happens is I think sometimes, and this is partially because you can't see the whole loop. Like from any part where I'm at in the loop, I can't see the entire loop, right? So I'm depending on the assessment, the judgment of the people that are here, right, and how they communicate that to the people that are in the
Right.
back, in terms of making sure that everybody is pulled up all the way, they've stopped here, we're filling this next section. If we really fill this back section, if we all keep moving up and fill, like, it actually helps, instead of leaving those big gaps because we're all anxious to get out of our car. If we fill up this section, it takes another minute to fill up the section, but that extra minute actually allows for this other section to exit. So that's what tends to be the most efficient. But I think sometimes what happens is, because everybody's in a rush, they hear this part is unloading, they're unloading. We're trying to get these people, you know, on this side of the building to get out of the car. We're leaving big gaps. The kids are getting out really fast.
Yep.
They're getting into the building, but now that's when we've got the bottleneck.
Yeah.
So if we're patient, we move up, we fill all those gaps in, that actually helps to create less bottleneck up here and helps us to get the kids out.
Is it ever communicated with the, I don't know, the gentleman kind of trying to usually cope with that? A lot of times parents that, come in through the main entrance for whatever reason and let kids out, a lot of times when the car group is trying to leave out, people stop and let those cars go.
So, yeah, so
Different reasons, but it's like, we should be going.
So I
And
just,
then
I
if we come in-
just spoke with him, we're actually gonna have somebody, because he's part of our maintenance team, he's gonna be helping with other things around campus, we're gonna be putting somebody else out there, and part of the expectations with that person's already been. If you're choosing to come in and pick up your students in the parking lot, it's gonna probably be as long, if not a longer wait, because car loop is going to get the priority with getting out.
It's
Therefore,
not necessarily just for cars, for pickup, for drop off.
Correct.
Right, right.
correct.
We're all.
But my point is getting that loop part moving before moving the people out.
So-
As a
parking
rule
lot.
of thumb, nothing should impede the flow of the car loop traffic.
Yeah. It
We
should
should
never
not ever
stall.
be stopping car loop traffic for any reason.
And if anybody's ever been out there in the beginning of the year when I'm out there and I'm running around like a lunatic, like, why is it stalling? Move.
It's a
I
tough
can
job.
vouch for that.
So just to be clear, so the crossing guards is a function of resources, money. It's not that the school can't do it. It's just that
It's an outside source.
There's a-
It's a
there's a-
third-party company that we would have to employ.
So it's just.
But also
it's
a
just
crossing
it's
guard-
purely a financial choice.
Well, not
of whether to-
necessarily, because a crossing guard could only work where there's a crosswalk.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Oh,
So what
sorry.
what we need is actually two different things. If there was a crosswalk, what we would need is a crossing guard. We don't have crosswalks, so what we need is traffic control. So those are two totally different things. And a person that does traffic control is not doing crosswalk.
Mhm.
They're just doing traffic control.
And can we get someone to do traffic control on Chaparral?
On Chaparral, same thing, we can't, resources. You know, and we don't have the resources to be able to try to, we've looked into it. But it comes out to be, when you hire those companies, it comes out to be well over $5,000 a week. Because you have to hire them for a minimum of 6 hours a day.
And the city of, not the state, the city of Henderson is the one disallowing the crosswalk, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we don't get to choose where a
We don't
crosswalk
choose.
goes as a city.
So I think it's a rather simple problem. You have a 2-lane car loop that goes all the way around, that funnels into 1 lane. So I firmly believe the school should dedicate the resources to broadening the exit, to
But we
allow
can't.
both lanes to go out simultaneously,
But we
and do
can't.
whatever it takes to pressure the city of Henderson to get and use the resources of the school if necessary, to hire a crossing guard to stop traffic. So when those two lanes go through, they're not cut in half down to one lane. That merger
Does bottleneck a lot.
it's a design flaw that should be addressed. It's only gonna get worse as the school gets bigger.
Like we said, we're put in for the traffic study. We can't do that until the traffic study says that we're allowed to do that.
So,
We can't just widen up the exit, we can't just change that.
so that's a city ordinance that you can only have one in and one out on chaperone.
That's what, when the building was being built, that's how the city had approved based on traffic study that's how they approved the construction.
Okay.
So any changes thereof, they have to approve to allow us to either put in any additional entrances or exits or widen anything.
Well, that's great news.
Then we
In
have
other
to then
words-
look at the next step is saying, okay, affordability, how do we fund that? Because you gotta remember, again, we're a public school, we're funded on public dollars, and we do it at a much less, quality that we do with that. And some of these things that we've looked into have cost upwards of $1 million.
But-
So it depends, it
So
really
you've
depends
actually
whether or not.
moved forward with the traffic study then?
We've put in for one. Now,
Well,
to them to
to
decide when
broaden-
they're gonna do it,
And with the intent of broadening the exit, is that
with the intent of seeing what options we even have. It was a very
We
broad
have
traffic
people out
study.
here like all the time. We have, the person that does security, you know, and, that's sort of
Mhm.
a capacity for Academica. He's come out and watched the loop. You know, he's pulled the old traffic study for us. He's advised us on, you know, who we contact, and we've taken those steps. So like, we have people that are, you know, really truly invested
Mhm.
in trying to solve the problem.
HPD's even been nice enough to come out to try to help try a couple of things with us. At one point, they tried to direct traffic in one specific direction. They said, yep, that was a horrible idea, never do that again. That is a direct quote from the officers that came out to try that. They said that was horrible, don't ever do that again. They said the best thing to do is just have people be able to go with either one of those directions, so you maximize where they can go. So if they go down to Chaparral, it causes another bottleneck at Chaparral, so now you have two bottlenecks. So you have to let traffic go in both directions. As far as opening or changing anything, again, that's gonna be up to the traffic study and what the state will allow us to modify
Because
the.
that's
But I
kinda-
see what you're saying. It's kind of like if you're leaving a parking garage on the strip, right? They tell you, if you're in this lane, you're going left. If you're in this lane, you're going right. And there's like the 2 or 3 different lanes to exit the parking garage. So I understand what you're
So the
saying.
loop was 2 lanes the whole way.
And if you were on the, you know, if you were on the inside lane, you have to turn left. If you're on the outside lane, you're turning right.
And again,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, I am gonna put some of this on parents too, of when you get there, take the path of least resistance.
Right.
You might wanna make that left because you wanna go back towards St. Rose and that's a little bit quicker, you wanna go past Amazon. But if cars are, if that's blocked because somebody's waiting to turn in or you can't see it, make the right, go down to Volunteer.
So to her-
And vice versa, if you wanna go right, but that's bottlenecked, don't stop the entire car loop so that you can make the right, make the left. And, you know, correct, some of these common sense things, when you're pulling up and you're waiting in line to drop off, don't block the exit. Keep the gap so cars can still exit the property. Again, so some of this is remedied by parents just following normal traffic law and normal traffic patterns. But, you know, be that little bit of flexible of taking the path of least resistance. That by itself, I have seen take 15 minutes off of some of these car loops, because again, these things don't seem like they add up. To a minute or 30 seconds even between each car loop doesn't seem like much, but when we do in like elementary, for example, when we do 100 rounds, 30 seconds times 100 rounds, you know, we're now looking at a significant amount of time, and these add up really, really quickly. So everything runs smoothly
I
when
agree with that, taking the path of least resistance.
yeah, it's just come out and you go whichever way is gonna
If
be
we
able
had
to
a,
keep
if
flowing.
we had a crossing guard at the exit that stopped traffic, then to your point, he and I had talked about this at length. If the crossing guard simply stopped traffic at the exit, then everyone in the right lane could go right, everyone in the left lane could go left. You wouldn't have to pay to broaden the exit.
But we need
But
everybody
you
moving
can't
at
have a
one time,
crossing
it's still
guard,
not
so you
moving
have
up
to think
both
outside
lanes.
the box. think outside the box. How do we fix that? Because we can't have a crossing guard there.
I think we just get a
So-
sign, guys, that says path of least resistance.
There you go.
I mean, we've solved the problem right there.
And you'll be amazed at how many times I've gone into that road and I'm like, go right, and the person's in the car going, nope, going that way. I'm like, no, go
It's a
right.
giant square, so
flipping
if you
U-turn
have to go
right
left,
Or flipping
you turn
U-turn.
on. If you have to go right.
Again, these things add up.
Yeah, do a
Doing,
U-turn on the school, yeah.
again, these things add up. Doing a U-turn on in front of the school doesn't seem like much, but when that stops traffic from leaving for another 30 seconds, now we've got the 30-second delay here, a 30-second delay there. Now we've already extended car loop by 1 minute because a person decided to do a U-turn. Things move smoothly when everybody's just looking at, I gotta get away from this area, and then I could take another track. And the nice thing is, where we are, every road eventually leads to where you need to go. I live off of St. Rose. If I go down to Volunteer, guess what? I could just go over by the M and then take that to St. Rose. If I make the left, I could just go straight down, get onto back onto Raiders Way, and then go down to St. Rose. If I get there and I have to make the left and go down Dale, I could then take Bermuda down to St. Rose. There's 5 exits, 5 ways to get to anywhere.
Is the traffic
Utilize
study
those.
just for the exit, or is it also looking at Volunteer and using Amigo as an exit?
We can't,
They will look at the entire.
we're gonna look at the entirety of our
The whole
property
campus.
and what the state will allow for the trucking and for everything else that's going around for the city,
When will we find out the results on that?
when they do it.
So the Pinecrest has paid for it, and it's just a matter of.
We've requested it.
All right, that's encouraging.
Welcome to
hear.
bureaucracy at its finest. I would like a traffic study. That is now sitting on somebody's desk, waiting for the stamp of approval. Then that'll get stamped, and it'll go to the next person who's gonna say, okay, write the bill, write the check, the bill. Then that'll come to our desk, and that'll go on the next desk that says, pay this bill. Then that'll go on to the next that says, send this, and unfortunately, this is not going to be a snap of the finger project. We all have to be patient, we all have to work together, we all have to remember that this works very smoothly when we follow through. We have done car loop with every elementary and every secondary, I'm looking at them together, where we're able to get everybody out in a half hour for all, including sibling care. We've done this before. And we've been able to get we've been able to get kids dropped off for all of secondary in the morning in less than 15 minutes. And we've been able to get, these things are possible. If you could do it once, you could do it again. What is the variable in all these situations? People trying to go rogue and do what they want to do.
You guys have done a great job. to be honest.
Thank you.
The first year,
We appreciate
first
it.
week of our loop, you were cool, you were like, people haven't seen nothing that they didn't.
No, that was a whole, listen, I still get anxiety at the beginning of every year for the first day of car loop from that. I don't sleep for 3 days. But, we did, that was a whole different system. So that was when we tried to go to something more efficient, that was supposed to be more efficient, but was unvetted. And it was a perfect example of jumping in before we knew how to swim and we said, hey, this sounds like a great program, a great plan, let's try it. Nope.
So great though.
I did see with the apartment across the street, Amigo, they're gonna have that ingress and egress. It's a natural to have this open at the same time, and I can't see where there would be any pushback on that, because they're gonna have that opening on the south side of Volunteer, Amigo, from the apartment community.
Yeah,
So it seems like a natural, the Pinecrest, that already has the infrastructure in place, it's already there. The exit's there, it's just a matter of taking the gate, opening it.
but then where you can't load them. So I'm happy to sit down and we can look at a map with you after this, because again, everybody that's here and everybody that's watching, I'm happy to sit with you and we go over that. But again, you gotta then look at that, where do you load the kids? You're giving up the entire area that we need and that we're required to have in order to input and load students. So using that exit would actually slow car loop down, because now there's no way of getting the kids out there for parents to wait. So we could go through that a little bit.
As well as that is where there is that crosswalk in the parking lot that the students who walk do utilize.
Exactly. You
So
gotta
that
remember,
would then cause
it
potential.
takes 2 car loops worth of distance in order to input and have the students waiting outside for when you pull up. It takes 2 full car loops ahead that we have to input in order for you to not have to wait for your kiddos. If we input and then wait for your kiddos to come down to you, you're gonna be waiting 5 minutes for every section, because it's gonna go up, it's gonna get inputted, wait for everybody to be inputted, wait for the kids to see it, wait for them to meander on down before we could even then move you out and do the next section. So
I think if you had the second exit, you could have every kid down here just waiting, and it would go, I mean, it would cut the entire loop in half, the time in half.
but it's also incredibly unsafe. So at that point, but like I said, you and I I'm happy to talk to you about that. But I think at this point, does anybody have any other questions?
Yes, for
Yes.
the, tomorrow I ready some link and then will email the parents or we just, where we supposed to get the.
For the iReady schedule,
Yeah, tomorrow, yeah.
so in elementary, the teacher will let you know based on class, but for middle school, it is December 1st and December 8th.
Because,
I think she's talking about the parents PD, the link.
Oh, the
Oh.
parent
Oh,
PD.
the parent PD.
Yes, it is in the pirate post.
just click the link.
Just click, it's a Zoom link, so just, enter that number and that will be for the pirate,
That's tomorrow,
PD
right?
for tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Elementary is tomorrow, and then middle school will be Friday.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing up Pirates Post, because I do love the redesign of it. It is so much easier to read.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. A lot easier to get to what you need.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion on, but it's great you're doing the in-person meetings again, but they're doing, it dovetails with when the parents drop the kids off the car loop. Because car loop will basically sit around for another 30 minutes waiting for this meeting to start. If you really want to have participation here, have the meeting start sooner.
Well, it
Yeah,
has to
we're-
go after elementary.
We're after
Elementary.
elementary car loop ends is the
Oh, that's what it
earliest
is.
we could do it.
Right,
Okay.
so elementary
All right.
ends at 8:30,
My
so.
bad. It's,
yeah.
okay.
And then there's the 10 minutes for us to be able to set up the benches, get everything.
It's a
ready.
nice time to go grab a cup of coffee, come back, sit. I was working in the car.
There you go.
All right. Well,
All right.
oh.
This sweater's beautiful, I'm sorry, I mean,
Oh, me? Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I was like, oh, thank you. I was gonna say, I'm gonna just have to start wearing this every time now, we're done.
Stay with us
It's
today.
okay.
You're
Here's our hype, I know.
Now your feelings are hurt.
Y'all my new best friends.
like our hype squad.
I know.
Stay with us.
I agree, though, I was just asking her today, I was like, where do you get your shirts? Because I need to go there. Thank you.
So what was the answer? Because she does have good.
Would you like
Would you like to
to?
disclose where you got
We'll chat after. Now we're on film, yeah.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Have a great day. Thank you.